Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the first session of Audit and Governance with the new council. Welcome to the new members of the committee. I'm to remind you at the start, in case of fire alarm, the exit doors at the back, and make your way to the far end of the car park if there is an emergency. Toilets are outside. I think you've probably found those by now. Door on the left. Water's available outside. This is a public meeting and members of the public are welcome to listen to the debate today, but unless registered as a speaker, you're not able to take part and speak. We have a live webcam casting, so can I please remind members to use their microphones and turn them off when not speaking. And I'd now like to ask the officers at the top table and elsewhere to introduce themselves. Thank you. Mr. White.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darryl White. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm Lisa Buckle. I'm the Director of Finance.
Apologies, I'm late. I'm Drew Powell. I'm Director of Strategy and Governance.
Hello, I'm Pauline Henstott, Head of Finance.
Afternoon, members. I'm Neil Hawke, Assistant Director for Strategy and Organisational Development.
Oh, and Paul Masmas from Devon Audit Partnership. And I think we've got a colleague from External Audit on the Teams meeting.
Okay, thank you. Should we have the person on Teams introduce themselves?
Yes, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Jackson Murray. I'm a director with Grant Thornton, the external auditors. I just want to say thanks very much for letting me attend remotely today. Unfortunately, this meeting wasn't in my calendar until recently, so I couldn't be with you in person today, so apologies for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray, for being with us, and we look forward to the discussion with you in due course. Good. Okay, so are there any apologies?
We've got one apology. Thank you, Chair, from Councillor Rake, who is on the Teams call, and he's being subbed by Councillor Lawford. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lawford, for standing in. Brilliant. Okay, right, item 1, the minutes. Mr. White, please.
Thank you, Chair. We'll be looking for approval of the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of March 2023.
I think you probably are aware none of us attended that meeting. So my understanding is that we're just noting these minutes because they have been approved by the full council already. Is that correct?
They've been through full council for noting, but being the committee where these were generated from, it'd be helpful of a vote for approval of those minutes of the Trinket record, albeit taking the point that not any of you were there at the time. But okay. I think I took those minutes. I think they're probably a thing of beauty, to be honest.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. Is anyone doubting these excellent minutes? Would anyone like to propose the thing of beauty? I mean, the minutes to be approved.
I'll move to.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor. And seconder? Yeah, Councillor Hancock. Thank you. Okay. Do we vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favour?
That's approved for the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay, there are no, item 2, there are no items of urgent business. Division of the agenda, I'm not aware of any reason to divide the agenda, so we can move on from that. Declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest with regard to the items on the agenda? No, I don't see any, so we can assume none. Okay, thank you. All right, item 5. So Mr. Murray from Grant Thornton is joining us on Teams, as we can see, and will present the report from Grant Thornton, the sector update report and update on the 2022-23 audit progress. Audit process, I beg your pardon, audit process. Okay, Mr. Murray, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon again, everybody. So just for some context, because as you've already described, the committee has new membership now following the May elections. So as your external auditor, we have two main responsibilities. That's in respect of auditing your financial statements, and the latest set of financial statements are for the year ended 31st of March 2023. And we also have responsibilities to consider the arrangements that the authority has in place to secure value for money. So those are our two statutory responsibilities. We are appointed as your external auditor by a separate organisation. So our contract of audit is with an organisation called Public Sector Audit Appointments, and the council took a decision at the last procurement exercise, which this contract is let under, to procure the external audit services you receive via PSAA. So our contract is with PSAA and your contract is with PSAA as well. And then PSAA appoint us as your external audit service. So helpful, I hope, to just give a high level, why am I here? What do we do as your external auditor? The report on the committee's agenda today, Grant Thornton will generally always bring an audit progress update alongside some of our other key reports that we bring to you throughout the year. What this report seeks to do is, as I suppose the title says, update on progress of the audit first of all, and then set out any sector updates that may be relevant to you as a committee or for the items that we are discussing today. We previous agenda item was in respect of the minutes of the last meeting, so members may well have seen and read those minutes. So there was a lot of discussion in respect of our external audit report at the last audit committee meeting. The reasons for that, cutting to the chase, I suppose. So under the relevant statute for the 22-23 financial year, relevant authority, so the council was required under the statute to publish draft accounts by the end of May 2023, or publish a notice to say why that had not been possible. And then the statute requires audited accounts to be published, or a notice to state that the audit is not yet complete and why by the end of September 2023. So at the last audit committee, we informed committee that we would not be in a position to have concluded our audit by the end of September 2023 for the 2022-23 financial statements, and therefore the council would be required to publish a notice on its website setting out that the audit was still underway. And there was various discussion questions on that throughout that meeting, and then some actions recorded as a result of that discussion and recommendations included in the previous minutes. The report on the agenda today tries to give a bit more context into the situation that we are in, where we find ourselves, and that's both locally for yourselves, that's both HAMS, but also that national context. Local audit, which I use the term, is referred to for all public sector local authority audits. Local audit for a number of years has been in a position of challenge, I think it's fair to say, and our report, which we reference on pages 16 and 17 of today's agenda pack, sets out some of the reasons for delayed publication of audited accounts. And actually on page 16, you can see there's a table there which sets out the relevant financial year, always ended 31st of March, the deadline for publication of unaudited accounts, the target date for publication of audited accounts, and then the percentage that met that target. So you can see from 31st of 2016-17, 31st of March 2017 year end, some 95% nationally had audited accounts published, down to its lowest point in 2021, just 9% of local authority accounts audited by the deadline of the end of September. You can also see throughout those years, the target dates for both publication of draft accounts and publication of audited accounts have changed. That has to be enacted through legislation, and this has been in response to some of the national challenges that I've just described, our report also seeks to give some high-level context on page 14 of the PDF, page 12 of the agenda pack as stamped. Some of the other national reporting on this from both the National Audit Office and also from an external independent review that was commissioned by government and led by Sir Tony Redmond in 2020. So I think the key message still stands that we will not be in a position to have audited the council's accounts by the 30th of September, and hence a publication on the website will be required to state that the audit is still in progress. One of the many reasons that are set out in some of the links and reports that I've included for the timeliness of audit is frankly staffing challenges for all local auditors. It's a highly competitive, highly skilled market. There are not a lot of people who, once qualified, want to stay within the world of local authority audit, and that may be because of competitors, so they may well transfer to other audit firms. They may well decide that they want to join local authority finance teams, so people in our teams have similar skills and skill sets to those in Mrs. Buckle's team. So if she's looking to recruit somebody, we're fishing in the same pool, so to speak, to coin a phrase. And a number of other people will see that they will do their audit qualification, audit training, and then go and get a career in another field, whether that's within professional services still, but within advisory or tax, etc., or use that for another career. So for a number of years, there has been a real challenge in respect of recruitment of experienced local auditors. You will see, if you look on Grant Thornton's website, that we can constantly have job adverts out. So if you wanted to look on our vacancies, you will find public sector audit vacancy roles. Clearly, we can only employ people if they have the correct skills, etc., and frankly, if they apply. And there are not a huge number of candidates who wish to come forward for these roles. So that's one of the reasons. And the reason that we're unable to complete the audit is we do not have a team available to complete the audit in the timeframe set out. The work plan, also on today's committee agenda later on, sets out that our detailed audit plan will come later this year, so to the September meetings, and then we have our audit findings report, which is the findings from our financial statements audit, scheduled for the March 2024 committee as currently scheduled. I set out in the report that it is unlikely that we will be able to begin any kind of substantive detailed on-site audit until the end of this calendar year. And having spoken with Mrs. Buckle and Mrs. Henstock yesterday, updated that and had that discussion with them around timings. By the end of the calendar year, I do mean the end, so be that December onwards. So we've discussed that with Mrs. Buckle, Mrs. Henstock, and also, as I've said, on the work plan, the committee that the findings report is scheduled for is March 2024 to set out some context of timescale. I'm under no illusions that is a particularly busy time for finance team colleagues, as it is around the country. So I'm acutely aware of that and have discussed that with your finance team as well. What we also discussed was drawing up a list of absolute priority areas. So should there be time that we have that we're available to do some audit work, what would be priority number one prior to getting to the end of the calendar year, and so on and so forth, and really prioritizing that work around other finance team colleagues who will have budget setting responsibilities, etc., as opposed to some of the other areas of audit we're required to do around properties, for example, where colleagues in estates teams or valuation teams may be less involved in some of those business critical tasks that are set out at that calendar year. So the detailed audit plan in terms of what our audit approach and what the risks are will come to the next committee. Our target is to report those findings of the audit to the March 24 committee. In terms of recruitment, as I said, if you wish to look on the Grant Thornton website, you would see job vacancies advertised for experienced auditors. Clearly, I'm not in a position in a public meeting like this to set out what exactly is the detail of our recruitment plans, but in high levels, I can say that we have significant numbers of trainees joining us in September as part of our graduate recruitment programme. And we also have a number of experienced colleagues due to start with us in the coming months. However, as you'll appreciate, someone will start with us and then go through a period of induction before they are fully effective and productive. The other comment that I made at the beginning around public sector audit appointments, so Grant Thornton and the other audit firms are held to account nationally by PSAA in terms of quality, in terms of audit delivery, etc. So PSAA, who you chose to go through the audit appointment process with, hold audit firms to account in terms of their national delivery. And you'll see that we set out on page 14 stamped of the agenda pack, page 16 of the PDF. Whilst Grant Thornton's performance absolutely mirrors that national performance in terms of the reduction and then slight uptick for 21-22, we were ahead of the national position. And for context, Grant Thornton are the largest auditor of local authorities within England. I've said quite a bit there. I suspect there'll be a number of comments or questions from committee members. So in the interest of time and moving to those, perhaps I'll leave my comments there for now and invite any comments or questions from in the room.
Yes, thanks very, very much, Mr. Murray. Appreciate your comments. Are there any questions from members? Yes, Councillor Nix.
Yes, good afternoon. As you've already alluded to, it's a very busy time for our officers in sort of December. They're looking at the budgets for the following year, etc. When will you be in a position to give us start and finish dates for this audit? You've said at the end of the year, but the actual physical dates.
Thanks. So through you, Chair. The team who I would hope to be able to complete this audit have other audits that they need to complete prior to that. Should they go as planned and as I expect them to, then December is the date, and I don't have an exact date, but I can speak with Mrs. Buckle and Mrs. Henstock around an exact start date. And then we would be working to the March committee, which I forget the exact date of now, but would be in my calendar, where we would report findings. What usually happens is we would report findings to that committee, and then should the committee agree with those findings and wish to recommend the adoption of those accounts, the audit opinion would usually follow a few days after that committee once we've received signed documents and been able to check those, etc.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on this? Okay, I think you'll note, Mr. Murray, or remember the fairly heated, lively discussion in the last committee. None of us were there, but we've seen the video, where the previous leader asked some specific questions. There was a recommendation at the next meeting, you be asked to present a detailed plan, including timescales, showing what actions you propose to take to restore an acceptable level of service to address the shortage of experienced audit staff. Do you have any more comments to make in answer to that request, or perhaps you've already answered it?
So I suppose nothing specific. As I've said, our recruitment continues non-stop. There is not a moment where we're not trying to recruit staff and colleagues. Nationally, you may be aware, and I believe when I spoke with Mrs. Buckle yesterday, I know that PSAA had an event or a workshop where a number of colleagues may have attended and talked again about this from a national level. Other things being looked at rather than just GTR, how is this backlog cleared? So at over 600 local authority audits still outstanding, this is a significant national issue, and some of those audits go back as far as 15, 16, 16, 17 financial years. So nationally, this is being looked at by audit firms, but also government. What do GT propose to do? I think, as I've set out, it's that continued recruitment of colleagues, whether they're graduates, trainees, school leavers. Clearly, they need to go through their training contract, so they're not going to be fully effective, experienced auditors from day one. And it's recruitment both from the UK and from overseas, because increasingly that is a realistic option for candidates. As you'll appreciate, there is a significant lead in time for that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, given the impact on our staff and team, which is unfortunate, and we're going to try and work around, which I appreciate, but what level of commitment are you now giving us that will meet the deadlines of starting work before the end of this calendar year and delivering the report in the March committee meeting, March ANG committee meeting?
So sat here today, I wouldn't be able to give absolute assurance over that, because clearly that's still a number of weeks and months away. However, my absolute assurance would be that is what I want to happen, because if that doesn't happen, we continue then going into future financial years. I think it would be remiss of me to say absolutely that it would be the case, because I can't promise that sat here today, given we're at the beginning of July.
Yeah, any other questions? Councillor Birch, please.
Yes. Thank you for letting me speak at your meeting. Not a member of your committee, but I do have executive responsibility for governance. Mr. Murray, do you accept that your company or firm is actually in breach of its obligations to this council? Do you accept that this is a situation that really shouldn't have occurred? That, I mean, you're here, as I understand it, to apologise for the current position that you're in. So, I mean, that's my first question. Do you accept that this is really a situation that shouldn't have happened?
So through you, Chairman, I think we'd all accept that local audit generally is in a position that shouldn't have happened with over 600 audit opinions outstanding and overdue. That is not an acceptable position to be in. As I also mentioned, so our contract is with PSAA, who hold us and the other local audit firms to account for our delivery of our national contracts. So that the contract point is our contract is with PSAA, but I would totally 100% agree that the wider local audit system is broken, and everyone I think recognises that, and it needs fixing.
So it seems to me of what you're saying that this is down to a substantial problem in respect of recruitment. That seems to be at the nub of the problem. How has this come about? I mean, economically, somewhere along the line, there is a substantial deficit when it comes to people of your experience and qualification, or your colleagues' experience and qualification. What has brought this situation about? I mean, why has this occurred and it placed us in the position that we're in? I mean, what is your view what are the events that led up to this happening?
Sure. So through you, Chair, I'll try to keep this brief because I could probably speak for the rest of the day and evening about this. So I suppose a potted history, if you wish to say. So recruitment is absolutely one of the key challenges, but it's not the only reason that we've entered into this position. In our report, I've linked to a couple of publications, but recruitment and the retention of key experienced staff for audit firms, and frankly also for some local authorities, is a real challenge. I think from an audit perspective, the regulatory impact of our regulator, so who audits the auditor, the Financial Reporting Council, expectations of what audit is and the amount of scepticism and challenge that must be applied, particularly in areas around key estimates, so the valuation of the council's land and buildings, the valuation of its defined benefit pension liability, the net liability. that expectation and that workload has increased exponentially in the last few years, and that's not a bad thing, but that's in direct reaction to some of the challenges in respect of audit, both in public and private firms. So think back to Carillion, British Home Stores, but also some of the real challenges that we see and continue to see within local government. So Woking is a recent example of some of the challenges that can happen. So audits are taking significantly longer than they historically used to. That, combined with challenges of staffing, and part of the reason, frankly, that people may not want to be in this profession is that the job they signed up for and began a number of years ago has changed quite significantly, and that's not what they wish to be doing anymore. So that's one of the challenges. Accounting becomes increasingly complex year on year. Unfortunately, it's rarely the case that you're told you don't need to do something further. What will often happen is accounting standards or auditing standards are bolted onto the norm. So each year you're doing more and more. And local authorities themselves are doing more from a financial reporting point of view, challenging things to do in terms of accounting, or taking on riskier areas, commercial investments as an example, that involves more audit work. So we're in a world where auditors are being asked to do a lot more work on more challenging sets of financial statements, with fewer people wanting to stay in the industry from an audit point of view. So that's some of the reasons why audits are falling so far behind, in my view. The other element of this is, so rewind a number of years ago, back to 2012, we had the Audit Commission, which was a quango, if you remember that term. So 70% of local audits were undertaken by the Audit Commission, district auditors, and 30% of that was undertaken by private sector firms who the Audit Commission commissioned. From the end of 2012, the commission was abolished, the Audit Commission, and then the work was put out to tender for private sector firms, so 10 different lots around the country. Audit fees were driven down quite considerably, and so again, from an attractiveness point of view for public sector firms, private sector firms, apologies, with the risks involved in the work and the returns, this is becoming a less attractive market. And I think we've seen that bear out in the latest public sector audit appointments procurement, whereby some of the larger professional services firms have decided that they don't want to be within the local audit market anymore and didn't tender, or were not successful in those tenders. So there's a small pool of people who can do this work, and there's a number of other reasons that have led to a position, frankly, where something drastic needs to change. This isn't going to be tinkering around the edges. I suppose some fairly drastic action is going to need to be taken to get local audit back to a footing of moving away from these delays. So apologies, that was a fairly long response.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Mr. Murray. It's useful to understand the background. I think I'm also concerned that we look at it from our own point of view and the implication on us as a council. Councillor Oram, as a point or question.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Murray, given your current level of resources available to you, do you foresee a scenario where you'll miss a December start for these external audits? It just would be quite helpful for the committee to have a bit more of a specific answer to that. And also, can I just bolt on to that this committee is due to meet on the 28th of October again. Are you confident that you'll be able to give us a more specific answer in terms of start and finish dates for the audit? Thank you.
Sure. So through you, Chair, I think in response to the first answer, or the first question, getting it in my head, I think the answer is yes, there is a risk. And I think that's what I tried to reflect earlier to a previous question of, can you give us firm start dates? And I don't think I can at the moment, so there is a risk that could be missed. The second question, in October, yes, I should be in a better position by that point, because previous audits that should have finished by then will either have been finished or not. And clearly, if they have been finished, then that start date can be can be firmer and agreed, and if they have not been finished, then we'll have a better idea of what the other start date would be.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Dennis.
Hi. I think we can all agree that this is obviously an unacceptable position, and I appreciate the effect it's going to have on our staff. But it strikes me that we don't have much choice in this matter, and without being flippant, I'd rather Mr. Murray was back at work doing audits than explaining to us why he can't do them any longer. So I don't know if the way to move this on is for me to propose the recommendation or.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dennis. I think that's good, but if you don't mind, I'd like to suggest an addition, if we may, which is to ask Mr. Murray at the next meeting to make a firm commitment on the timescale of finishing this work. So you can't make a firm commitment now, but at the next meeting, we're going to probably ask you the same question. Can we add that, please? And are you happy to take that amendment, Councillor Dennis? I think that's how I'm supposed to do it. Is there a seconder?
It's the next.
Yeah, yes, I don't mean the next meeting in July, I mean the meeting in September. The meeting, I just checked the date because we don't want you to.
28th.
28th of September is the next one, just so that you're aware. Are we taking this as a, do we need to vote on this? Yeah, is there a seconder?
I think it'd be better, I think it'd be better that it be Grant Thornton rather than Mr. Murray.
Okay. Good point, thank you
very
very
much. I think poor
much.
man's got enough on his plate without actually naming him.
Well, he is our audit manager, I think, but yeah, I'll take that amendment, of course. Yeah, good suggestion. Okay, is there a seconder? Yeah, seconded by Councillor Nix. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Dennis, for the proposal. All in favour? That is carried. Thank you, Chair. Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray, for that. I think we'll move to the next agenda item, and please stay listening or go back to other work if you think that's a better thing to do. Okay, thanks so much.
I'll stay on the line, but thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for your time. All right, so item 6 is a review of the internal audit plan for 2023-24. I think we've got apologies from Councillor Brazil, who was supposed to be presenting this. So who's going to be presenting this on his behalf? Oh, yes, Mr. Middlemass, please.
Obviously, we'll present our plan. So this is our internal audit plan, previously agreed at the March 23 audit committee, of course. The list of audits is from page 30. In essence, just to explain the process, in essence, every year we do some core audits such as council tax, and then we look to sort of cover off the other sort of core, the other council areas over sort of 4-year period. Some audits we do more frequently than every 4 years, depending on their importance. And within the plan, we also look to cover off any high risk areas, and also do follow-ups where we've provided, say, a limited assurance, and we want to go back and look at it again and see that actions have been undertaken. So whereas the plan was agreed in the March Audit Committee, obviously this is an opportunity for you again to feed into the plan. In our final report for the 22-23, you'll see, which you're due to see at the end of this month, you'll see the outcome of all our work for last year. So you'll see that doing all those audits in our plan results in a defining outcome in terms of an overall assurance opinion and assessments against all those audits and so on. I suppose I'd make a point, obviously, if you do want us to do additional work, obviously then we'd need to make or have a conversation about how to resource it. In essence, the audit resource are the 2 auditors who work for South Hams and West Devon, but we can provide additional resources from DAP as required, or indeed take audits out of the plan if we need to. So I think the plan is quite well, there's quite a few days in the plan at the moment, and just on in terms of starting the work. Well, we actually have started work for 23-24. Of course, we have to. So our subsequent update reports in future committees will provide some updates on those. But obviously happy to take or to hear for any comments about any of the audits and or any, as I said, any additional work you want us to do.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Mr. Middlemass, and thanks for coming along to the meeting. And again, because we're all new, we may not ask all the right questions here, but let's try and see what feedback or questions there are on this. Councillor Rake has got a question. Oh yes, thank you. Councillor Rake from far off France or somewhere.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Middlemass. Can I just, given what we've just heard from Grant Thornton, I realise you're in a slightly different game, but do you face significant resource constraints now or in the future?
So we are in a different game. I think obviously our people don't have to be chartered accountants, for instance. I mean, so a number of us are qualified. I'm a chartered internal auditor, for instance, but most of our people are not. And also, I suppose South Hams, West Devon have the advantage of having, well, the two auditors are employed by the council, and they are both extremely experienced and capable and know where to look in the council. So they do a very good job. So the one in recent years, there's been a bit of a move to divert, I suppose, audit resource to provide insurance over grants and so on, which in the last 2 or 3 years has had an impact. And of course, there's a COVID activity, which again sort of there was a problem about doing actual work, but I think at the moment with the internal audit resource, there's not currently a problem.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions here? Councillor Dennis, yeah.
So just looking at the sort of plan, there are obviously some areas that haven't been audited since 2016-17, and but they've got an audit interval against them as 3 yearly. Is that a new sort of target for a yearly? I guess my question is, why hasn't that already been done as we're now in 2023?
Yes, so it is a new approach. So what in essence is contained in the paper is what I created a 4-year plan, so that you can look down the 4-year plan, you can see every sort of in essence every significant area of council business and a time period to complete it, and there needs to be some latitude. So some work you bring forward and some you sort of may delay as a result. But I think intention is to do the work within that time period. Some audits again are more significant, so you'll do it every couple of years. So the core ones, yeah, you'll probably do every year. Some, as I said, less important ones, perhaps every 2 or 3 years, depending on, I suppose, our assessment, also management assessment of how important they are and so on. So that's broadly how it works.
Councillor Dennis.
So I guess with that in mind, one that sort of flagged up to me was the electoral registration. So it's not known when that was last audited, and if I'm reading the table correctly, there's a suggestion that it won't be audited until 26, 27. Is that right?
Yes, actually, we're doing that. Just starting that now. It is on the list to do this year. I put not now in terms of I don't know. I've not got a record of when it was last done, but we are actually starting planning now, and it will be very it will be informed by the most recent elections. So it'll be interesting to do that.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions from my side. So I may have got this wrong, but I think there were 7 areas of limited assurance in the 2021-22 internal audit report. Is that right? And if so, are they going to be redone? Because they're not all, we don't have 7 listed as limited assurance on the current year's work plan.
I'm trying to remember, because I've just working on the audit report for this year, and I think this year there's only 3.
This year being the one you're going to
as in
present
for 22-23.
Okay, thank you. All right. That answers that
Obviously,
question.
we are still in the last process of finishing off all the audits. So, but there are, I think currently only 3 that we're reporting at the end of the month. Yeah.
Okay, my second question is in relation to the chart you've got, Appendix 5 sector risk model. So I think what you're trying to do here in showing us this is the top 5 or the countrywide organisational risks, and you seem to be covering all of them from the top downwards, apart from when we get to business continuity and supply chain. So is that something that you sometimes look at, or do you think that risk is managed elsewhere or is not normally audited by internal audit?
So we'd probably encompass that within our procurement audit, and we've I think we recently did the audit on procurement actually. So we would encompass in that audit.
Does that include business continuity?
And similarly, we have recently done a business continuity audit as well, which again will be in the report.
Okay, thank you. My last question, and one that we discussed in the prep meeting, is about the timing of the plan. So, I mean, it's good that we can see the plan, and I think normally it comes into the March meeting, and this is new this is an update because we're all new. But do we also see the plan after you've shown us, or we've discussed the report, the internal audit report, in the next meeting? Because I think what I'd like to be able to do is to look at the report and then have another chance to look at and perhaps revise the plan for the current year while there's still 6 months left of the current year. So is that something we've got on the agenda, or if not, can we add it to the agenda for the meeting where you present the plan?
So in essence, for every standard audit committee meeting, there's an audit update, and the audit update will provide a list of all the audits. In essence, the chart will show the audits in field work at draft report stage and planning, so different stages and where we are, and I suppose when the indicative times to do the audits are, and they are only indicative because and actually so a couple of audits, for instance, recently where the business area have said it's probably not the right time to do it now, where we've now pushed back and said actually it's probably a good time to do it because we want these areas which are developing, so we want to feed into their developing controls rather than criticising them at the end.
Okay, that's very good, helpful, thank you. All right, are there any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, then I'll move the recommendation to reconfirm the proposed internal audit plan. Is there a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Oram, thank you very much. Okay, all those in favour? Yeah, that's
unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I have to say that again because I didn't have it on. Thank you for joining us, and feel free to stay. Okay, the next item, which I've lost, and that's under the paper, is the risk update. So again, we don't have Councillor Brazil, so who normally would present this. So who is going to present? Who's volunteering to present this one?
Chair, I'll do an introduction, and then Mr. Hawke will go through the detail.
Okay, thank you very much. Go for it.
Really, just members, just to put this into context for the new members on the committee, what you've got today is the risk register, and it's just one part of the risk framework. At the next meeting on the 27th, you will get our annual governance statement, and that sets out the entire approach to governance and assurance. It's the idea behind the AGS is to ensure that business is conducted in accordance with legal requirements and that public money is safeguarded and properly accounted for. That read in conjunction with the Constitution, which sets out how we make decisions, and the procedures follows the key parts of the governance framework. So, just to highlight that this is one element of the way that we manage risk. Okay, there we are, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Chair. So just to give members a bit of background in terms of our strategic risk register. So as an audit and governance committee, you will receive updates on the strategic risk register at least twice a year. So we aim for every 6 months bringing that update forward through to the audit and governance committee. Alongside that, we also report on risks to the executive through our integrated performance management report, which is a report we haven't put in front of the new executive as yet, but that will be coming forward shortly, which sets out the risks against some of our strategic priorities. So in addition to 6 monthly updates to this committee, the executive get those updates on a quarterly basis. I think it's also, as Drew's already said, this is part of our overall governance and assurance framework. And as you would have seen going back to the previous report, within the internal audit plan, they clearly set out the links to the strategic risks that the council are facing. So where an audit, I think one of them is the waste and recycling service, for example, is an audit planned for this year, and it clearly highlights in the audit plan that that's a strategic risk for the council. So there is a clear link there through the internal audit function and our risk management function. And just to give a bit more context in terms of what Drew was saying, so each of our services has an operational risk register, which doesn't come forward to this committee because they are deemed to be risks that we can manage within our existing resource, and therefore doesn't need escalating to this committee. And we consider risks through each of our committee reports. So as you would have seen by now, at the back of each of the committee reports, there is a risk section where we set out any risks related to the decision or the topic that we are setting out to members. So in terms of, if we fast forward to Appendix A, because actually that is the strategic risk register as it currently stands, so page 49 in your agenda onwards. I mean, there's a bit of an introduction there about what we mean by risk and what is risk management, which I don't propose to go through today. But if we move forward to the sort of steps in our risk management process, so there's a 5-step approach: identifying and recording the risk, analysing and assessing the risk, responding to the risk, monitoring and reporting, and then integrating learning. So anything we've learned from the sort of risks that we're seeing and the risks we've managed, making sure that that's integrated across the organisation. Page 53 sets out a risk management scoring framework for the council. Now, this framework was adopted in 2018, and one of the recommendations to committee is that we do review the risk management strategy, because things have moved on quite a bit since 2018. So I think this risk management scoring framework could probably do with being updated, certainly in terms of some of the financial limits set out in the document, and some of the impacts. So we will be reviewing this scoring framework moving forwards. And then moving a bit further forward, we get into the detail of the strategic risks that are set out to committee today. And there aren't a massive amount of strategic risks in front of you today. We do consider them through a number of forums. So the senior leadership team are regularly considering the strategic risks to the council. And we also have discussions at Performance Board to see if anything needs to escalate to the strategic risk register from our operational service risk registers. So maybe if it's something that's spiralling out of control within a particular service that needs that escalation. So waste and recycling is, typically would be an operational risk, but right now we deem it to be a significant enough risk to highlight to you that there are changes coming, and therefore we should be monitoring them much closer with a higher degree of management scrutiny. So we've got 5 key risks set out in this report. One is around adherence to the medium-term financial strategy, which is one that has been on the risk register for a significant amount of time, given the local government financial position. And I think primarily because of the lack of a longer-term financial agreement for local government. I mean, Lisa, feel free to stop me if I'm getting that wrong, but I think that's a significant risk, is that we only get, for the last several years, we've only had a 1-year financial settlement, which makes it incredibly difficult for us to plan longer term. So that is a risk on the strategic risk register. The second risk is around inadequate staffing resource. So we've heard from Mr. Murray today around the challenges that Grant Thornton have faced in terms of recruiting. Well, as a council, we also have significant challenges in that space, particularly around some of our senior technical roles. planning officers is always a challenging area, as is currently legal officers. So we've struggled for quite some time to recruit senior legal officer posts to the council. So that one has recently escalated. We are taking steps to address that risk, and I think it's important to say that mitigating actions are set out in this report. And have recently approved a pay and reward strategy for the council to try to entice candidates to the area. So there's a whole package of work around making and selling the benefits of working for South Hams District Council. The next risk, and I'll stop for questions in a moment if that's okay, Chair, but I'll just run through the high-level risks as they currently stand. The next risk is around the health and wellbeing service provision. So, as members will be aware, we have a contractor who deliver leisure services within South Hams, Fusion Leisure, and as is seen nationally, the leisure sector was significantly impacted by COVID-19 and continues to be impacted as a result, and not least now because of the increased energy prices, which is a significant impact on their operation. So that features as a risk within the plan. And fair to say we are continuing to have discussions, and the executive will continue to have discussions with Fusion Leisure to monitor that situation. The next risk is around business continuity, which encompasses sort of cyber security as well. So we are fortunate as a council that we have two sites because of our shared working with West Devon. We have a backup site which is not even in the South Hams, so we have some resilience within our systems. But it's fair to say you can always do more, and I think particularly around cyber security, we are seeing and continue to see a number of local authorities being subject to attacks by external forces. So that will continue to be a risk, but we are doing great work on that front. So each of our services is updating their business continuity plans on a regular basis, primarily led by our environmental health team, who have sort of overall oversight of our business continuity planning. And we are currently working with government to look at becoming a early adopter of a cyber assurance framework, which is a new way of assessing how secure our systems are. So we are involved in developing that framework with the National Cyber Security Centre, which I think is a positive move and puts us in a good position to help shape what that framework looks like. So the next risk is around delivery of waste and recycling service, and this one's changed slightly over the last year. I mean, obviously, the risk initially was about us bringing the service back in-house and our ability to deliver that service, but I think that's going well. The risk has changed now slightly as we look to roll out the Devon Align service to the rest of the properties in South Hams. So it's only right that we highlight that risk to members. And there is a dedicated project team in place to manage that implementation, but no service change, particularly on that scale, is without risk. And the final risk is a new one, so around the strategic direction for the council. And I think this demonstrates that the Strategic Risk Register is a living, breathing document and changes on a regular basis. At the point of preparing this report, we hadn't had discussions with the executive about the strategic direction for the council and their ambitions for the new administration. We are now having those conversations, and that risk, I'm sure, will drop off the next time it comes forward to this committee. It may well be replaced by a number of other risks, depending on those ambitions. We may see more risks coming forward onto the Strategic Risk Register, because that's what we need to do, consider what are our strategic priorities and what's going to prevent us from achieving them. So I think I'm happy to hand over for any questions, Chair, on the detail.
Thanks very much, Mr. Henstock. That's very well presented and very clear. Are there any questions on this whole topic? Raising eyebrows. Yes, Mr. Middlemas.
Just to make a comment for your education, obviously, as you probably are aware, obviously, as an audit committee, you will be, I suppose, partly responsible for the risk management framework in terms of asking questions about effectiveness of the framework, and that is not just at a corporate level. And it is good practice to have, you know, half dozen or 6 or 8, 10 risks, but no more. I've seen councils having like 20 audit risks, 20 risks and so on. That's just not manageable. So at a corporate level, but also a service level. So the whole framework, and so you'll just be mindful of that when you're doing your business. I just thought I'd put that in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think we've had a separate discussion with Mr. Powell about presenting to this committee the overall framework that we're going to be, or we are using, so that we understand the context of this and the assurance framework that the council is working to. So I hope that could come at some stage.
Absolutely, Chairman. I think the annual governance statement, which you'll see next meeting on 27th, sets out the majority of that. And I think from that point we can then discuss where areas of perhaps weakness or where we want to make any changes.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Powell. That's great. Yes, Councillor Yardy. Press the button.
Yes, I've done it this time. I note that the climate crisis and net zero goals were not in the risk register. Is that because we are clear and confident that we will reach those goals? I personally don't see it yet, but I'm surprised it's not there.
Okay, who's going to take that one? Good question.
I'll pick that one up. I wish I could pass it to my colleague. No, it's a fair point, and we have had discussions around that one. At the moment, we've got 2 aims. One is to be net zero as an organisation by 2030. We are, I would say, reasonably confident that we can achieve that. The 2050 aim for the district is another challenge. There are present targets. We report on performance against those to both ONS through a deep dive into the thematic theme, and we also report to executive on performance through the quarterly integrated performance update. So not a perfect answer. I would certainly say that it would be a reasonable suggestion from the committee that it could go on to the risk register. And I think as and when the new corporate strategy is developed over the next couple of months, it may be that the ambition of the council is increased in terms of what it's going to achieve, and that might well put it high on the strategic risk register.
Thank you. I note that if we were doing estate renewal and modernisation, quite a long-term plan that may not be complete by 2030, if we consider the building we're in already.
Absolutely. I mean, at the moment, in terms of that, we've just secured funding from the Public Sector Skills Fund, which is to do the work for decarbonisation. But we also recognise, and our trajectory shows that there are large elements of our carbon emissions that we will not be able to control directly and won't achieve by 2030, but we will be looking at offsetting to balance that out, and that's part of the approach we'll take.
Okay, thank you. So I think the suggestion there is that the officers consider whether we need to add a carbon target onto the risk register. Perhaps we could just add that as a note, please. I also wonder whether we've looked at the overall financial risk in the risk register. So I'm talking here about a combination of fraud or loss of value of investments or other potential risks to our overall financial assets. Has that been looked at? Because it seems to me with 50 million in the bank or whatever it is, there's potential in investments in assets. That's should be looked at somehow or other. What's been the view of that in terms of adding it to the risk register?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of our fraud arrangements, we have got it on the committee's work plan to look at fraud policies going forward. We are quite fortunate in that we don't have a high level of fraud. Our main areas of fraud would be around housing benefit expenditure. When the council was going through the pandemic and responsible for administering the COVID business grants, We did have some level of fraud within that, and we were very fortunate that we were able to direct that work to our colleagues at the Devon Audit Partnership to look at that for us. So we don't see fraud as high risk in terms of being on the risk register, because we're managing the level of frauds that we have, but there would be strategies coming back to members as part of the work plan to approve, because we've done some work with the fraud department of Devon Audit Partnership, and our fraud policies do need updating, so we've got that on the work plan to come back. In terms of our investments, again, this committee will receive detailed reports on our treasury management activities. We obviously have strategies around our treasury management activities, so we look at things like minimum credit rating, of where the council places its investments, the return it's got on those investments. Again, there is a report that we're bringing back to the September committee on that. And we've actually commissioned some work from Link Services, who are our treasury management advisors, to look at ways we could vary those strategies in the future. So, for example, at the moment, the council has a counterparty limit of 6 million that we would put with any one financial institution. It has been 6 million for a number of years. So the committee could look at that and say, okay, how comfortable do we feel with increasing that counterparty limit to say £7 million? And then the committee could make some recommendations around that back to the executive and back to council to vary our strategy going forward. So there will be a very detailed report. I think at the moment it's on the work plan for 28th of September. Treasury management review, investment and treasury management strategy. So yes, there will be a report on that back to this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Buckley. Yes, Mr. Middlemas.
Oh yeah, just to put in, obviously this is one of our annual audits, certainly treasury management, but also main accounting and some others, where we also look at particular internal controls. So what's stopping a member of staff transferring the whole of treasury of Southam's treasury off to Cayman Islands or whatever. So what are the approval rates and segregation duties to stop that from happening? So that's one of the things we do that, as do of course external audit as well.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. All right. Are there any other questions on the report or the recommendation? Okay, I've got one other point to mention, which is, or to follow up perhaps, which is you mentioned that, if I got this correctly, in 2018 there was a proposal to review the risk management framework. Is that right? Why is it, if it is correct, why is it taking so long? And should we not add it to the next steps?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, 2018 was when we last adopted the strategy. So the proposal in front of members today is that we do carry out a review of that, aligned with developing our new corporate strategy, so that we'll have a new corporate strategy and a new risk management framework for the council. So, and I would say if any members of the committee have any thoughts on that strategy and what that framework might look like, certainly feed them into me. I think any views welcome on that as we're refining the strategy, so that we can then bring that back through to audit committee. Likely, is it September? I think there's a meeting in September. We can get that back in front of audit committee, and then with your agreement, that would be referred on to council for adoption.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. Thank you. And I don't know if anyone wants to offer their time to help look at the detailed risk management approach or framework, but we can say now or at a later point, presumably, if any of the members do want to get involved in that. Okay, so unless there are any other questions, let's go to the recommendation, and which I'll move. And is there a seconder? Okay, Councillor Nix, thank you. All right. Any opposition? Okay, let's go to a vote then. So all in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks very, very much for that topic, and very, very useful. All right. So the last one on the agenda we've got today is the future work plan. Who is going to present this one? Is it yourself? Yes. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Very much.
Yes. So we've presented here draft reports to come to the next committee, which is on the 27th of July at 9:30. So this would be the committee that would consider the draft statement of accounts and the draft annual governance statement. We've also got a report there on our investment properties. As Mr. Middlemas said, it is good practice to have a report on this coming to the committee on an annual basis. And Mr. Middlemas would also present his internal audit annual report. We have got a report coming to July as well about appointing an independent member to the Audit and Governance Committee, as well as some of our fraud and whistleblowing policies. And then moving forward to the 28th of September, that's when Grant Thornton would report on their external audit plan through Mr. Murray. We've got some Treasury Management reports on there, which we were just discussing. Updates on the internal audit plan. We will also bring a report every 6 months to this committee on sundry debts. And then as we move forward to December, that's when we are expecting a report from Bishop Fleming. So Bishop Fleming will be our new external auditors for 23-24 onwards. We will have Bishop Fleming for the next 5 financial years. There will also be an update on the internal audit plan, strategic risk register and a Treasury Management mid-year report. And it's also the remit of this committee to look at the annual review letter from the local government ombudsman, so that's on the schedule for December. And then moving forward to the 7th of March, that's when we hope we will have audited annual statement of accounts to bring back to the committee, along with the audit opinion from Grant Thornton. And Mr. Murray has also been in contact with me about starting the work for the value for money assessment. This will be covering 2 financial years, 21-22 and 22-23. And Mr. Murray and his colleagues at Grant Thornton intend to start that work now. So we will be providing evidence and having some interviews with Grant Thornton around that, so that can come back to the committee on the 7th of March. And then we've got our standard reports. The one I would like to pick out there, Chair, is around the annual strategies that we have to do. We have the capital strategy, the treasury management strategy, and also the investment strategy. And that is where the committee will set out the boundaries within which we as officers have to operate with regards to our treasury management activities. And that will then go on to full council at the end of March. So very much full council will be relying on this committee to look at those 3 strategies in detail and make any recommendations to council. And we will also have our normal reports around the budget book, shared services methodology. So that's about how do we share our staffing costs between ourselves and West Devon Borough Council, and another update on sundry debts. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. Good. Are there any questions on all this work? Yes, Councillor Yardy.
Sorry. Looks like a great schedule. Can I ask a question? It's really my lack of knowledge. If I was interested in business cases and assuming that we would have a consistent methodology with which we evaluate investments, where would that sit, please, in the future actions that I can see in front of me?
Okay. Yeah, so thank you, Chair, through you. If the council had a business case to make an investment in a certain project or asset in the future, normally what would happen is that would come to the executive along with that business case. I think we are looking at what could happen in the future is the executive and the Audit and Governance Committee could decide between them that they wish for some of those business cases in the future to firstly come to the Audit and Governance Committee. That hasn't really happened in the past, but because the Audit and Governance Committee, our remit really is to look at risk and governance of projects, but that doesn't mean to say that in the future we couldn't bring a couple of those reports back to this committee to sort of do a sort of deep dive around a certain project for the future. But at the moment, in terms of our constitution, it goes through the executive and then on to council.
Thank you. I'll take some advice from yourself, Chairman, afterwards about how we might proceed.
Okay.
Or otherwise.
All right. Thank you. All right. Any more questions on this? Sorry. Oh no, you were asking a question. No.
Chairman,
Proposed scope of review, task and finish group proposal. Before we get to that, I wanted to ask one or two other points, if I could. So we looked at the draft, or we looked at the accounts before this meeting. Am I right in understanding that the format of the accounts, the annual accounts, is pretty set, but we can make some amendments if we want to the narrative at the beginning? Because that's coming up in the July meeting, and or the topic is coming up. So if any member wants to make some suggestions for the narrative, how should they put those forwards?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I think we could only do that now for 23-24 because we've published our draft statements for 22-23, and Grant Thornton will audit those draft statements. So I don't think we can make changes for this financial year, but going forward for 23-24, yes, that's something we can look at. We do have flexibility over what's in the narrative statement. A lot of the notes to the accounts and the statement in the accounts are prescribed, and we have to complete them in a set format, unfortunately.
Okay. With regard to the independent member of audit governance, if we're are we planning to appoint anybody on the 27th of July, or just discuss in theory the idea of possibly appointing someone?
Yes, just discuss in theory, Chair, the possibility of appointing somebody.
Right.
So we have had conversations with Devon Audit Partnership, because there are quite a few Devon councils that are also looking to appoint an independent member, and we were thinking that we could do some sort of joint advertisement to see if people would be interested to not only be the independent member on our committee, but other Devon committees as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so thanks for the answers there. So let's go to the task and finish group proposal. I think people on the committee have seen this by email. I don't know, Mrs. Buckle, if you would like to just take us through this.
Yes,
just
thank you,
explain
Chairman.
the proposal, please.
Yes, so the proposal is that, thank you, Mr. White, for putting that up on the screen, for a task and finish group to be set up, to be established by the Audit and Governance Committee, to review and objectively assess with regards to the Freeport potential opportunities that it would bring to residents and businesses within the South Hams, looking at things like potential risk and risk mitigation, looking at the development of the Freeport and what that presents to our residents, our businesses, and what are the outcomes from and the engagement with the Freeport company that the council wishes to achieve. So I think the proposal is there, the committee is asking members if they'd like to be part of that task and finish group. Task and finish groups are something we do have in our constitution, and they are set up with a sort of a beginning and an end date, if you like. And I think the proposal at the moment would be to try to bring a report back to the 28th of September meeting in terms of time scale. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mrs. Buckle. Are there any questions on this or points to make? Okay, so let's move that motion then, can we? Or should we do both together? Or one, what do you, well, let's do this one, it's in front of us. Okay, so let's move this motion then. Is there a seconder for this? Yes, Councillor Yardy is there. Seconding. All those in favour?
That is unanimous.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
good. So should we now consider who's going to be on this task and finish group, or would you prefer? Well, you're nodding. Okay, so let's.
We can either do that outside of the meeting, Chair, or we could ask for volunteers now.
Okay, let's ask volunteers now because we're all here. So, Councillor Yardy, Councillor Hancock, myself. Oh, we're all volunteering, and Councillor Nick. Okay, good. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's first 5. Okay, that's good because we don't want it too many, but we don't want it too few either. So we do have a meeting suggested for Monday, the 30th, I think, of July. Is that right? Because what's been proposed, and maybe I'll ask Councillor Birch to just talk through this. Who's the executive member for this area has made a very good suggestion and a helpful proposal on the way we might start this piece of work. Councillor Birch, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much. Just to remind members that I have been appointed by the council to be its representative on the board of directors of the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport Company. And I welcome this proposal to give an opportunity to look into the workings of the Freeport and the company. In my discussions with the chair of this committee, I suggested that it might be a worthwhile exercise to give a presentation to the Task and Finish group as to what the Freeport is all about. And what I suggested to him is that there be a meet that I give along with Mrs. Buckle and with Mr. Brooke, a presentation to the Task and Finish group so that you are fully acquainted with the workings of the Freeport, and the date and time has just been mentioned by the chair. What I am proposing that the presentation take the following form, that it be broken down into three, is that the first part deal with the national aspect as far as the Freeport is concerned. In other words, why were they set up? What is the purpose of the Freeport? Bearing in mind that the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport is one of 8. There are 8 Freeports in England, and the Plymouth and South Devon is one. So there's the national aspect. And then the second session will deal with the workings of the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport. In other words, explain its governance, its setup, what it's hoping to achieve, etc. So that would be the second part. And then the third part would deal with this council's involvement within the Freeport, its involvement as far as governance and the financial obligations, etc. And then I think armed with the information that you're provided with, it'll give you a good start to dealing with the task in front of you. And quite obviously I will seek to attend the meetings of the Task and Finish group to answer any questions or give any information that you require. And I'm no doubt that I will also be assisted by Mrs. Buckle and Mr. Brooks. So that is what I propose as a contribution from my part towards this.
Thank you very, very much, Councillor Birch. I think that's really appreciated, and officers too. I think that'll help us get a very good start. And thank you to the 4 councillors that volunteered with me on that. I think just to be clear, as I understand, the meetings will be private, but they're open to all councillors. So if anybody else wants to listen in, they can do, because I think other councillors from this group or not from this committee might also want to listen, but they won't be able to ask questions. Is that correct? Is that how a Task and Finish group works, or they can ask questions?
It's totally the chair's discretion.
Okay, our discretion. Well, I mean, if they want to ask questions, that's fine, but let's not go down.
The other thing I'd add is that as lead member, Councillor Birch would also be invited as a matter of course as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I think he's coming anyway. Okay, great. All right, good. Thank you very, very much for that. So let's go back to the previous motion on. Is there a motion on the work?
All we're looking at doing is approving the work plan.
Approving the work
with
plan.
the addition now of a Task and Finish group being established.
Right. Okay. Is there a proposer? Yes, I propose. I move that. Is there a seconder for the work plan? Oh, sorry, Councillor Yardy is good. And all those in favour? All
That
right.
is approved.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. All right, well, thank you very much. I don't know if there's anything else. I don't think there's anything else, so we'll call the meeting closed. There is
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned
Yes.
that the first meeting of the Task and Finish Group was on the 30th, I think you mentioned. It's the Monday the 31st.
Monday
Yes.
the 31st?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
At
Monday the
3
31st, that's good clarification. I don't know what time it is.
3 o'clock, Chair.
Hmm?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. 3 o'clock, people can, I mean, presumably, I'd like to have it in person if we can, but people can join by Teams as normal. I want to say thank you to Mr. Murray, who stayed on patiently, and Mr. Middlemass joining us. And thanks very much, and see you in 2 weeks' time or whatever. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.